Okay, sprint planning. Sprint planning is what's done at the beginning of every sprint. It starts every sprint. Let's talk about sprint planning, sometimes referred to as iteration planning. In the Scrum world, it's called a sprint versus an iteration. And we're going to talk about three different areas. We're going to talk about the inputs, the things that go into and you need to know before you get into sprint planning. We're going to talk about the activities that you do inside of sprint planning. You talk about the general outputs. Now, these aren't all the outputs. You may have a few more depending on your group, but at least you'll want these at a minimum. So some of the inputs, you'll want to understand what the team capacity is for the next sprint. Are there any days off? Are there any holidays? Anybody has any vacation time or time that they're going to be out that they know about already? The business conditions. Have the business conditions stay consistent from the last sprint to this sprint? Has anything changed, or has anything been updated, or is different than the last time? And usually the product owner would be bringing that. That would be the team would be aware of that as well, and everybody going into this sprint should understand what the current business conditions are. The product roadmap. We don't cover a lot of that in this course, but there's an entire course around building product roadmaps. We do cover story mapping a little bit in this, and we also talk about some of the things that you do in design thinking in terms of mapping out a product. We did talk about release planning, which that comes into play a little bit here as well. So you can think about this in terms of the release itself. The product backlog, what condition, making sure you understand and have the product backlog there, it's up to date, everything's ready to go. And any technological things that you have, are all the environments up? Is everything that we need in order to do the work that we're thinking about taking into this sprint available, right? What's our technology situation? And included in that, I would say even the talent parts of the technology situation. Is anybody with a specific talent set going to be unavailable for this sprint, in which case we wouldn't be able to do this type of a story? So you need to know those things going in. Now, during sprint planning, we're going in and we're doing story selection, and then we're going to do this set that we select the stories, we agree upon that, and then we go. What does this mean? On the story selection, we agree upon the stories that are ready for selection. Now, when we mean ready, these are stories that meet invest principles. When we talk about backlog refinement, all of those things that we do in backlog refinement that basically make sure that a story is set up and ready to be pulled into a sprint, we need to verify that the stories that the product owner has lined up for this next sprint in which what they want to do, they're all ready for selection, meaning that we can take them in without having a lot of unknowns or questions or gaps in terms of what we want, in terms of being able to actually complete the work, because we're going to make a commitment to delivering the work. We don't want to bring in things that aren't ready for work. So we want to agree on the sprint goal. What is it that we're trying to deliver at the end of this? This comes into play as to what we're going to do at the show and tell at the end. What are the things that we're going to talk about? So what are we trying to achieve in this goal? On the select, agree, and go, so this is the activity of the team members actually looking at, okay, these are the 9 stories we want to take in this sprint. The team members go and they actually assign, they grab work. They are not assigned work. They go and grab and they pull work in. So team members actually go out and grab the work that they want to do. If I want to pair on something with somebody, we may grab it together and say, yeah, we're going to work on this story together as a paired team. But it's the team members, the delivery team members going out and grabbing those stories. They check against the velocity of the current velocity to see how many story points they're bringing in on those stories, make sure it would fit in their projected velocity moving forward based on yesterday's weather. And they also look at capacity, which they would have as one of the inputs. They would understand that and know, hey, if we're down a person, our velocity is going to be down a little bit. So let's compensate for that. And then the team and the product owner finalize on the commitment. The agreement from the product owner is, I'm not going to change scope. We're going to keep going on this thing, and I'm going to be available to you to help you out along the way. Team says, yep, we're going to pull these stories in knowing that we're going to deliver them at the very end. And then we go. It's that simple. The outputs, at a minimum, you're going to want to have your sprint goal out there so people can understand that. A lot of folks actually send this out, and it's part of their release planning. It's also part of what they send out to stakeholders to let them know what's going on. You want your definition of done out there. What does that look like for the sprint? You want a burn down chart. So you're going to begin your burn down chart at sprint planning. It kicks it off. So that's the first day. So you want to have that burn down chart ready to go. And you're going to have your sprint backlog, which again is the subset of the product backlog that you're doing for this sprint. So that's sprint planning kind of in a high level nutshell. When you think about this, this is the kickoff ceremony. This is how you start your sprint, and this is what you're going to be doing first thing out of the gate. The ceremony, we're going to talk about this in closing and opening ceremonies in the next section, but the ceremony is co-owned by the Scrum Master and the product owner. You're selecting those stories that are ready to be pulled next. All eligible stories should have gone through the backlog refinement process. If they haven't, there's a high risk of injecting waste into the sprint, and also injecting in the possibility that you may not be able to complete an item because you didn't review it. It wasn't essentially, and I'm using my air quotes here, ready for work, right? It wasn't ready for delivery to start working on it. When a new Scrum team is put together and you're new to Scrum, plan on at least an hour for this on the first couple times around, maybe your first couple sprints. But as you get better with this, as you get more comfortable with it and more fluent with Scrum itself and the flow, this should take no more than 15 minutes. I have teams that I've worked with where sprint planning takes 5 minutes, no more than that. In fact, if there's any question about anything that starts to kick it over 5 minutes, they know that that work is not ready for this sprint. It gets punted back in. They'll take that story back into their next group of backlog refinement activities, and they'll make sure that it's ready to go for the next round. But the product owner and the team is so in sync on this, on making sure that they don't impact the sprint's capability to work and the team's ability to deliver on their commitments, that anything over that time frame doesn't work. So typically 15 minutes with a very fluent team. This usually happens on the same day as the sprint close, and we'll cover that in the next section when we talk about closing and opening ceremonies. That's sprint iteration planning.